Yeah, welcome. Hi, everyone, can you hear me? Okay. How was lunch? I hope it was good. I mean, I had lunch, it was very good. So, okay. So today I'm actually here to share more about how Ansible can be used in enterprises. I'm actually the self-automation specialist for Red Hat. I cover the Southeast Asia region, including, of course, Vietnam, right? And then I also cover Hong Kong and Taiwan. So these are some of those things that we may see in some of our customers. In fact, some of the cases that I'm going to show today are things that we was doing as a POC for real customers across this region. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about an overview of Ansible. I'm just going to go quickly. Maybe can I have a show of hands who has worked on Ansible before? See one, two, quite a few hands up, right? So there's over there as well. So I guess you guys seem to have some background. So if I am going too fast or too slow, just let me know. Right? So let's try to have an interactive session. Okay, I'm going to start. Right. So basically, why we want to do automation is because you have done something whereby it takes you quite a amount of time to do it, and then you're trying to see how you can not have to do the same thing over again. And you can do this by many different ways, of course, like maybe writing your own scripts and doing some other stuff to solve the same problem. So as for all IT organizations, today we are seeing that we have a lot of tools. Changes are happening more frequently. Things are getting more complex, and expectations are getting higher. So what can be done is that we want to make sure that we have tools such as Ansible, for instance, to manage this rise in expectations as well as complexities, so that everything can become more manageable from that perspective. Of course, we are trying to see how we can actually get this acceleration and integration together with collaborations across the different teams within the organization. Right. We do want to emphasize on the fact that, of course, things like writing scripts, bash scripts or some other kind of scripts that you are using in your teams, this kind of automation has existed for a long time. What we are really looking at is how we can have this automation that exists across the entire enterprise, reaching the silos across all the different teams, which is why we are showing over here that you see Ansible is a tool that can actually help to bridge the gaps across all the different teams within a typical organization. So this is something that we see in a typical customer, right? So what are the things that they might see? User request is usually coming in from things like ITSM. It can be ServiceNow, it can be things like VMC Remedy, or it can be other form of ITSM systems. Then the request is going to trickle down. Someone is going to get a ticket, let's say from the operations team. Depending on what kind of cases that they are going to work on, it goes to the respective engineers to work on it. We can have different things like provisioning, right? So you can see things like server installation, hardening of OS, something with the middleware, and then of course you have things that's related to config management, right? Like your applications, the servers. Then we talk about things like patch management. How do you apply your patches, verify that everything is working properly? Then we have these things related to network administrations that seems to be similar to things like your VLAN creation, for instance. On the southbound, we talk about things like application performance monitoring tools. Can be things like Dynatrace, App Dynamics, or some other form of monitoring systems. That is really looking at the health conditions of all these applications that is going on, that's running within your enterprise. And of course, our dear friend, security and governance will run across the entire stack. You have things such as audits, right? Making sure that everything is traced within the system. This is how we see in a typical organization. And this is actually something real that we got from one of our customers. Right? So what we were telling them is that we can actually make use of Ansible to go and automate the task across all the different pillars. And that instead of having a manual process, we want to try to make it such that we are actually using REST API calls to communicate across the entire stack. Right, so this is something that eventually we want to reach. Just to give you an example, the largest customer that we have in Asia Pacific today, they are using chatbots, ITSM, using ServiceNow. They were able to use API calls to trigger Ansible in general. Right? We talk about, in our case, it's Ansible Tower, but the upstream is going to be AWX. To go and do all these tasks that we are mentioned over here. So a user issuing instructions to a chatbot will be able to interact with our systems via REST to trigger this specific automation. So again, we talk about what is Ansible in general. Ansible is a project that started in 2012. It was, of course, acquired by Red Hat in 2015. And some of the key characteristics it's simple, it's agentless, and it's extensible. The reason for saying that it is simple is because we are basically using YAML file. So for a lot of operations people who may not have programming knowledge, the fact that we are using YAML file makes it very simple for them to pick up the language so that they can use it very quickly and learn it very quickly and apply it to their daily work. It's not just the normal IT system admin, but we are also talking about people managing networking devices, for instance, of Cisco, Juniper, or some other form of networking equipment. So I do have friends who are CCIE, for instance, a Cisco certified expert, who are able to pick this thing up within 1 to 2 months. So, which is why we say that the fact that it uses things like YAML makes it very simple for people to learn this. Agentless, we all know that if you don't have to install agents, it makes your life a bit easier because you don't have to worry about upkeeping and maintaining the agents. Right? Extensible is because everything is using Python or PowerShell. The Python is there for the modules to manage things like Linux and Unix and your networking equipment. PowerShell will manage your Windows. So because it's written in PowerShell and Python, a lot of us, I'm sure sitting here, has skill sets in Python. So you can quite easily write your own custom modules that will allow you to do the stuff that you want to do if that module doesn't exist today in the Ansible world. And I see a lot of people doing that as well. Right? If you look at some of the GitHub repositories that's available online, we do have all these examples. So these are some of the common integrations that we see very common across this region. Right? You can see that these are the networking stuff. Right? It can be things like Cisco, your InfoBlocks F5, all the way down to things like Nokia and Huawei Palo Alto. So that is the networking layer. We are also seeing a lot of integrations and interests with things like Cyber, which is your password management system. Right? So that is quite common in banks, especially, whereby they have a central password management system. So we have capabilities to integrate with Cyber to draw passwords as well as to onboard VMs and then putting the password in default for Cyber. ServiceNow, a very common ITSM used by a lot of corporations today. These are the storage vendors that we may see from time to time. And then, of course, we have all the different cloud platforms, like Amazon, as well as our virtualized platform like VMware and Windows servers, as well as a range of different kind of the OSs, right? So you can see that we have, of course, then we have Ubuntu, we can have things like IX, which is the Unix system. Some of those areas that we come across, right? So it can be things like DevOps, monitoring, and Windows storage that we kind of mentioned earlier as well. So there's a wide range of integrations. So we kind of talk about this AWX project. So what is this project? This is actually a open source project that is sponsored by Red Hat. It allows users to better control the project from Ansible in their IT environment. Right? So it's basically an upstream of Ansible Tower, which is the commercial main part of Ansible. It has this web interface as well as a REST API call the REST API interface that you can use to make the API call that we saw earlier just now in the stack that we saw, right, that diagram whereby we say that ITSM can integrate with Ansible, and then from Ansible you can also integrate with some kind of application performance monitoring tools like Dynatrace. So that's made possible if you are using AWX. Right. AWX basically provides you with that RESTful API interface that allows you to integrate and interact with third-party systems that talks in REST. So, of course, this is our upstream. It's very similar to how Fedora and the Red Hat Enterprise Linux is, that kind of relationship. Right? So you have a dev branch that moves very quickly, which is the AWX, and then the stable branch, of course, it will become the commercial portion, which is Ansible Tower. Yeah, this is basically what we have in general overview of what AWX is about. So, can I know whether any one of you is using AWX at this point in time? Oh, I see a few hands as well. Right, so right now I know that usually we spin it up as a container. I know there are people running it on either the Docker IO or some other container platform. Right? So you can quite easily install this. It doesn't take much effort. There is a lot of support on this as well in GitHub. So I kind of finished a broad overview of what we want to talk about Ansible and AWX in general. Right, so I know that this talk is mainly on the use cases. So I just wanted to show some demo videos to give you an idea of how this thing can be used. Of course, you will see that the recording is using Ansible Tower, but basically that's the upstream. The upstream is AWX. You can try out using AWX as well to do similar things. But of course, if you want to do it in enterprises and you want to do it in a large scale manner, AWX as a single container is going to have some difficulties. It doesn't do those kind of clustering concept that we have for enterprises. So this is actually a real POC that we did, proof of concept that we did for one of the telcos in the region. So what we were trying to do is to make use of in our case, you will see that there's a REST API call that will come from our Red Hat platforms, which can be seen as just a platform for you to key in that case, right, variables. That's our cloud management platform, but it doesn't necessarily have to be platforms. It can be things like ServiceNow. The whole idea is that we will make use of the form that you will fill in that systems, and then trigger the REST API call towards AWX or Ansible Tower in this case. Then what's going to happen is that it's going to start a workflow whereby it's going to get a free IP or a couple of IPs depending. Right? In my case, I have 2 VMs, so I'm getting 2 different IP addresses from the info blocks, and then using the IPs as retrieved from the IP address management system to provision the VM on a virtualization platform. Again, this can be OpenStack. It doesn't have to be VMware. It's just that this particular customer is using VMware. That's why we were using this. Once we were able to provision the VM in this virtualized platform, we will start to deploy the required applications on top of it and do a simple verification test just to make sure that everything is working properly. Right? Then what's going to happen next is that this info block itself is really a DDI, we call it a DNS, as well as IP address management and DHCP, right? So in this case, I'm creating a new DNS entry so that we know that the VM has been created. After that, we will go and configure F5 because what I'm provisioning is a web application server that has a load balancer in the front. Then towards the very end, I'm going to open up the firewall ports in Palo Alto. So this is basically something that will cut across multiple teams within the enterprise. We are trying to show that everything can actually be done in a single workflow using Ansible automation. Can we maximize it? I think it's okay. You can just help me to maximize it. Or just help you. Wait. Can you press again? So I do apologize for some of the quality because I recorded everything in HD and it's a VGA connection, so it's kind of distorted. But this is basically the Palo Alto, right? You can see initially that there is no new rules, it's just empty. We have a DMZ that goes on a certain IP address range. And then this is our info blocks, which is the IP address management system. This is the demo net that we are using. You can see that we have two free IPs over here that we are going to get later on. These are the list of DNS. And of course, all the purples are the one that's occupied. This is F5. F5 is empty. There's no configurations. This is our web server. We will reload. We can see that it doesn't have anything. Right? So then this is our Ansible AWS or Tower UI that you can see from here. So this is our inventory. We can see that this is IPAM, load balancer, PanOS, and all the associated hosts with all the associated IP addresses as well. I'm just showing that these are all the local IPs we have on the same network. So we have a service catalog that we will select to provision the web servers. So you can see that what we have over here is all the variables that we will pass in. I mean, I do apologize that it doesn't look very clear from here. I mean, I can send the link to the video later on. So we will select this and say that we want to provision a web server, and we will wait for the approval. Right now over here, it says pending approval. So once the approval is going to hit the approve button, the platform is going to trigger a REST API call towards, you can imagine, AWS or Tower to kick off the workload. So we will just wait for the REST API call to be triggered and the workload has started in this case. Right? So the first thing that it does is that you can see all this information on the right side. I mean, I'm just making it on the left side, sorry. This is to find the IPs. This is to provision the VM and add to the inventory, deploy the web app, validate, and then info blocks to update DNS, and these are all the F5 stuff that we will do. So these are all information that we will pass from the platform, right, as REST API call. Over here, we have two VMs that we want to provision. We are checking this particular network segment. We see that .2 and .3 is available, right? So we are going to use this .2 and .3 IP for the rest of the workflow. What's going to happen next is that from here, we will start to trigger, I mean, we have the VMware modules that we will use to talk to the vCenter. So you will see that the VM gets created. This is all done automatically by Ansible Tower. So it goes through one round of restart because we are doing configurations on the IP address and hosting. So I'm going to log in as the Ansible user, it's not very clear. And then after that, the password together with the hosting, you can see this is web app 1, and you'll do a neat config that has a .2 IP on it. So this is the two free IPs that we pass along, the first one that was created. So if you're familiar with Ansible, you'll see the yellow text that says that this has been changed. So it starts to clone the second one. You can see that after the first one is done, it clones the template again, and after that, the VM will get power on. It kind of goes through the same kind of cycle that we see for the first web app VM. So from here, is booting. So again, one round reboot because it does this update of the configurations. This is not done using the VMware guest modules that we have today that's available. So we do have quite a lot of modules that can be used with VMware. I mean, of course, we have good integrations with OpenStack as well. This is a .3 IP in case you missed it. So basically, this bit is done. So the VMs gets created with the hosting gets created with the associated IP addresses. Then this task is done. So the next part of the workflow is basically to add this information into the inventory because these are two new VMs that doesn't exist before we start. So we need to let Ansible knows that it exists after that. So if you do a refresh, you can see that now we have the two new VMs that's inside. And then you will see the .2 and the .3 IP for this one. So then if we were to go back, we will be able to see that it goes on to the next bit of the workflow, which basically is to deploy the web application on top of it. Right? So this is all done in a certain sequence. So similar things, we are creating the index HTML, we're starting all the required services using handlers, and then getting this thing deployed. Then what we are checking after that is the resolution is pretty bad. Just running a validation test. So I'm doing a pro against my endpoint. So all those things can be done using Ansible. Right? So if it is good, then we will move on to update the DNS entries. So you can see that I'm creating the DNS entries. And the last portion, I mean, you will see 1, 2, 3, and 4 boxes. Basically, we are creating the new node in F5, and after that, we are creating the pool, adding the nodes to the pool, and after that, we will create a virtual server so that we have the F5 set up properly for this web application to use. So that's what we are doing for the next few bits of the workflow. So in our demo, we've actually split the Palo Alto firewall bit from the initial one. That was because what my customer at the time was telling us is that their network team is kind of separated team. So they want us to create two service catalogs instead. But you can put, of course, everything within the same workflow if you want to. That is not an issue. So you can see that it shows that everything is successful. It took a certain amount of time. It tracks through the whole thing, and then what we are going to do next is just to go back to check that the info blocks has all the settings set up. So if you can recall just now that we have two white boxes that shows that .2 and .3 IP was not taken. So now if you log back into info blocks, you see that it becomes purple. And I mean, I think you cannot read, but it's going to be web app 1 and web app 2. And if you go back to the DNS, of course, it's going to show that this 1 and 2 is also created inside the DNS entry. The message is saying created with Ansible. So you can basically customize the way you want it to look like using automation. Then this is F5. You can see that just now it was empty. Now we have the web app 1, 2 nodes created. The pool itself is going to be the HTTP pool, right? With the associated members of port 80 for the Apache service. And then over here is the virtual IP that we are setting that is associated with the pool. So on the whole, it looks like this, right? You have your heap pool and the nodes. So this portion is done. The last bit that we need to do is basically to open up the firewall. So then we're just passing all the required information, like where is the source and destination, and then we're getting it to trigger again. So it goes through a pretty much the same thing. So if you are using something like ITSM, such as ServiceNow, right, you just need to do a very similar steps, but you will need to make sure that you write your own Node.js script that will allow you to trigger a REST call towards the AWS or Ansible tower in this case. You will achieve the same kind of effect, whereby from it can also be VMC, right? Doesn't matter, the VMC remedy. See, this thing is triggered automatically by the system upon approval from the authorized personnel. And this basically is very similar. I'm basically creating the object and then adding it to the firewall policies. Over here, I'm creating a backup before I update the configuration. The second bit is to create the object and using API. I'm just using the API to create. And the last one is to create the actual firewall policies inside Palo Alto. So you will see that this is a bit, I know you cannot see from this, it's quite clear. And then we have a new line over here, which is our new policies. We are basically saying that from the demilitarized zone towards the bit, we want to allow the web services to go through. So with this new rule that goes into Palo Alto, you will now be able to access the web services. If you do a reload, it will go through the bit. And you can see that it's doing a round robin. If you do a refresh again, it just goes back to number 1. So this is basically what we can do with Ansible, right? The end-to-end kind of provisioning and integration. I think we can go on to the next one. Maybe do a refresh. And then okay. So there's another use case that I think I 10 more minutes, okay. Okay, so 10 more minutes, maybe I'll come back later to this. I'll go to network automation since I think someone was asking about network automation just now. Basically, what I wanted to show in the Windows patching is that we can also do patch management of Windows. The whole idea is that we have things like WSUS from Windows that can be used to work alongside Ansible to do patching and management of Windows machine. So that is something that we are doing for customers across this region as well. So the network automation is we have some of the very common use cases that we are seeing across today in different enterprises, right? It can be things like the health checks. We are doing things such as checking for CRC errors, the logs, and then we can use it to integrate, of course, with the network operating center to do health checks on a regular basis. So AWS or Ansible Tower itself actually has the capabilities for you to schedule tasks to run at regular basis. So that scheduled task can be used for you to do this kind of health checks. Then the next one is, of course, we want to treat infrastructure, including the management of the networking devices. Simple things like we saw just now, the firewall rule creation, right? So that can be done quite easily with the networking modules that we have in Ansible. Things such as VLAN creations, BGP creation, like routing, cannot be done using AWS or Ansible. Right? We talk about things like config drift. Configuration drift itself is something that concerns people with very large network. If you have thousands of routers and switches across a network, how are you going to ensure that the configurations is actually based on what you want? Right. One of the stuff that we were telling large telcos is that you can try to upload the configurations into Git repository. We will do a source code management of all those configurations as well. Right. So with that, we will be able to do a diff against the baseline. You can also use that to keep track of the changes that's happening within the network during the maintenance windows. Patch management, we have shown before that we can use Ansible to patch Cisco routers. If you have new binaries, we can actually do that as well. Security and compliance check, we can use it to check across standards. Can be things like the CIS standards, and then make sure that it is actually the same as what you expect it to be. This one is more of just creating an audit report. So we can actually, I'm not sure whether you are familiar with things like Cisco where you can run a show inventory, right? So you can actually get all the information from the inventory command, right? And then tabulate them into a form of HTML report or some other form of reports. This is how we can write a auto firewall rule. You can see that it's quite straightforward. Basically, what's going on is that we are calling the particular module, right? The PanOS security rule, and then we are passing in the information such as what is the address of the firewall, what is the source and destination that we want to put it in, and after that, all the different profiles. So these are things that if you do it this way, you'll be able to create the same kind of rules that I was showing you just now. This is how you can do it for Cisco, for instance, right? So over here, we are running the Cisco command, and we have to say that we do not want to shut down the interface, and that we want to check what are the surrounding line protocol, whether or not this is there when we do a show interface. If it is there, then the interface is good and it's up and running. Over here, we have the capabilities of figuring out whether this is an iOS, Junos, or some other form of platform, right? Because we can check what we call facts on the system, right? So we'll gather the facts, we'll know whether or not this is iOS or whether or not this is Junos. With that, we will be able to make use of conditions within Ansible to say that run this certain commands only on iOS devices, for instance, right? Since the command is kind of different. This is a bit similar to what I was mentioning just now about the fact that you can create a table and pull out all the information for the different networking devices. This is helpful if you want to figure out which are the ones that doesn't comply to the desired state that you are looking at. Right, you can see over here that this one is 2 and the rest is all 3. Right? So this is the odd one out. With this, you can say that, well, I will do something to this by upgrading. And again, all these things can all be done using Ansible. You can use Ansible to check, figure out which one is not in compliance, and then after that, update to the required version. This one is similar to the conflict drift thing that I was mentioning earlier. You can see that you have the minus, 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 and the plus, plus, plus. It's very similar to using git diff. It will show you what are the lines or configurations that was removed from the system and what are the stuff that was added. So from this, you will be able to figure out which are the ones that has been added without any authorization, or that whether or not this fulfills your requirement for the network configurations. We have the capabilities of making it into a nice JSON format. You know, when you do show interfaces, it shows back a bunch of text, but we can actually use Ansible to make it into a nice JSON format. You have the dictionaries, you have your key values that you can actually extract and use much easier, as compared to just having a bunch of text that comes back to you. So this is useful for people doing troubleshooting. So if they want to pull certain information, if they do it this way, they can figure out what's going on. Just to briefly go through this thing, so I did sit down with the Palo Alto engineers at some point in time. We were looking at how we can integrate, of course, using the next generation firewall with things like Ansible, right? So you can see that, let's say there is a brute force attack or some other cyber attack that's going on a particular IP address that is picked up by the next generation firewall. You will say that this particular IP has been compromised. We are trying to do a denial or quarantine of this particular host. What can then happen is that this can use an API call to trigger things like ServiceNow to alert the network operating center that there is a possible attack on this particular host or this particular IP address. Once the network operating center determines that this is a real issue, then the next thing that they can do is very similar to what we saw during the demo, whereby you can basically trigger a REST call towards towards AWS or Ansible, and then quarantine the particular subnet. So that is something that a use case that we think will be applicable to real life, and that's something that we were talking together with the Palo guys. I guess my 10 minutes is probably up. But this other thing is just more showing that I am able to update the ACL of the Cisco CSR and then the policies inside the firewall, so that the servers over here is able to access the web server on the other side. So it's not just a single setting of one element. We can do a chain of elements across the entire network. Right? So that was something that I was trying to show one of my defense customers on this. These are just some links, and basically that's like the last slide. I'm not sure if I have time for some questions. Yeah. Anyone has any questions?
So actually I have two questions. Focus on AWS or Tower and the underlying model. The one actually Ansible is just the orchestration. The thing that doing the dirty work, the configuration, the connection is the underlying model, the Python library, written by Cisco or Juniper or Arista or F5, right? So my question is that during cloud deployment, how often do Red Hat need to write a new module like that?
For cloud deployment?
Yes.
Inside AWS?
Whatever.
I mean, you mean for setting up like, because even in AWS you can also have Cisco image, right? Like CSR. It also gets deployed in cloud as well if you want to. Are you referring to that, or you are talking about something else?
No, I'm not talking about the device side. I mean, for example, on the previous example, when we provision an F5 router and an F5 firewall, we have Ansible to do that, right? I mean, during actual deployment, how often do you need to write a new one, or just the existing one?
We can reuse a lot of existing ones. So just to give you a numbers, right? So we have covered 65 platforms as of Engine 2.8. and we have more than 1,000 modules. That's an increase of 300 from about 8 to 9 months ago. So we are covering quite a wide spectrum of devices. So to your point, we don't usually have to write new stuff because a lot of vendors are working with us quite actively.
Thứ nhất là câu này có tiếng Việt để diễn giải chính lại. Câu thứ hai là đối với Adobe hay Ansible thì hiện tại là trên workflow theo kinh nghiệm của em thì hiện tại là workflow chỉ có định nghĩa trong trường hợp mà job thứ nhất fail hoặc là ok thì định nghĩa tắt thứ hai là gì? Ansible Tower trong tương lai thì có một cái plan nào để cho là đối với workflow thứ nhất kiểm tra output nó với một điều kiện của mình thì Trần có chạy thì step thứ hai thay vì chỉ ok hay fail không?
You're asking about the workflow of the Ansible Tower or AWS. In the workflow, there's step. What if the step one fail? Does that do some conditional check fail over or something like that?
You can do that. So what I didn't show is that I was showing a straight through, but you can actually have a line that goes down that says that if the previous task fails, run another task.
Let me clarify a little bit.
Go ahead.
Actually, I know that Ansible Tower can trigger the save job based on the okay or fail status of the job. But actually, during actual sometimes we will need to trigger the save job based on the output on the text or the regular expression output of the server job. Is there any such capability?
Right, but the thing is, it's the same thing. Right? I mean, if you were to run a task, let's say in the first box, and that you will get the output back. Let's say you are trying to do a curl towards an endpoint, and then you say return content. You will register the content, whereby you get all the stuff that's written back. From there, you will be able to do your regular expressions to figure out what.
So what we still have to do that inside the playbook?
It's inside the playbook. You use the playbook to control the workflow.
Có thời gian chắc một câu hỏi nữa. Có gì sẽ bàn luận với việc giả không ạ? Các bạn có câu hỏi không? Đây là câu hỏi hiếm khó. Ok, thì như vậy thì chắc là mình không có câu hỏi nào, xin cảm ơn mọi người. Thank you, Anthony, for sharing your thoughts. Hopefully we will next year.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
I'll just invite me. I'll come.
Thank you.
I mean, anyway, we will be around. If you have any questions, we are outside, so you can still ask. Okay. Thanks.
Mọi người đã biết về Ansible rồi, và tiếp theo thì xin mời sẽ nói về microservices, auto scaling in hyper microservice architectures của anh Nguyễn Trung Đức và Hoàng Thọ Thịnh. Xin mời hai anh dẫn lời.